If you don't mind, just for a second.
But, I mean, if you can incorporate sort of some of that into the general search.
Yeah, I'll put all of that in. The 3 copies.
Obviously.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Sorry for my delayed reaction.
Sorry, what submission? This one?
Julian's offering me a dollars for dinner. Andrew's had KFC.
Oh, that I don't know.
It's probably the dollars.
All stand. The Coronial court now stands resumed. Please be seated.
I'm so sorry, I should have read that. I think Your Honour is prepared to grant leave to Mr Espy for Naja, just to finish off some questions for Naja before Mr Edwards. Yes, thank you.
Constable Kirstenfeld, my name's Espy. I also appear on behalf of Naja. Just in light of the answer you gave just before the lunch break, I might just ask you just a few more questions, if that's all right.
Sorry, I don't remember which one was that.
So
just refresh my memory, please.
Sorry, you're asking, what are you asking?
What was the question just before
you
lunch?
asked some questions of my friend on the phone, Mr. Sutton.
Oh yes.
In relation to some of the language used by his client, Sergeant Bounds.
Yes.
You said, as a member of the IRT, you've never heard Sergeant Bounds or anyone, never experienced racism from either him or anyone else in
No.
the IRT.
Correct.
You yourself haven't used any racist language or racist slurs or behaviour?
I've probably on occasion used words and terms that obviously not appropriate and poor language, but never depicted at any group or race.
What sort of words or slurs do you recall using?
Swear words, that sort of thing. Nothing appropriate.
Right. Just show the witness. If you could just have a read of that, do you recall that text message exchange between yourself and Constable Roll?
Sorry, what was the question again? Sorry, I was reading.
Do you recognise that text message exchange as an exchange between yourself and Constable Roll?
Yes, I see that that's what it is.
Right. And it seems that you were, it's not necessarily something while you're on duty, but you're planning to have some drinks at Monty's, which is a bar in town.
Yes, correct.
Right. And you've used the phrase, "What time's beers, nigger?"
Yes, I have.
Do you accept that that's a racial slur, that that's racist language?
That's very inappropriate. I haven't depicted it towards any group of people. I've used it at a very poor judgment call as a... I should have picked a different word. I should have said something different. I don't have an excuse for myself as to why that's occurred, other than that I should have picked something else, and that does appear to be very inappropriate. But I'm not referring that to any group of people or race. And that I've simply used it as a term towards him that is inappropriate. I can say that.
In a perhaps a joking manner or something of that sort, or slang, or what do you mean by
Joking slang being, yeah.
you've said in your evidence earlier you've worked with Aboriginal police officers, including Derek Williams, for example.
Yes, he was on my patrol group when I first started.
Would you use that sort of joke or slang towards him or in front of him?
No, I would not.
In front of members of the public, Aboriginal people or other people in the community?
No, it's not a general term that I use. This is a moment lapse in judgment, I'd say, and I've used a poor word that I shouldn't have used.
And you would understand in this town, in Alice Springs, where you've worked, that's a word that's been used and directed towards Aboriginal people. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Deep
That's,
hurt that's caused many people.
yes.
You've explained that perhaps you've used that in a joke or a light-hearted manner, but do you
Yeah,
accept that?
I can see that that's caused offence. I do apologise. I know that's my apology doesn't really forgive that, but at the very least I can do is say that I am sorry, and it probably is unforgivable, but
Right.
I do offer an apology for offending anyone for that.
Right, because that's about a week before the shooting incident that we're here for. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I was just checking the date then, sorry.
Do you understand the concept of casual racism?
Yes.
In hindsight, do you accept that any racism, casual or more serious,
Unacceptable.
particularly someone with the responsibilities and powers that you have as an officer, that's simply not acceptable even in a joking manner?
100%.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Do you want that back?
Mr Edwards.
Thank you. Constable, you were asked some questions before lunch. I think by Mr. Boyd, but I may stand to be corrected. You were asked specifically whether or not you had ever been exposed to a violent reaction by members of the Indigenous community. And I think you said yes, there was an occasion in Alice Springs.
Yes.
Can you just tell us about that, please?
There was a lady who was trying to hang herself. She ran off into the bush. She had a power cord or a rope with her, so there was an actual real threat that could occur. I went after her. While doing that, there was just happened to run past the bush where someone was hiding, and he jumped out and attacked me from behind and ended up on top of me. I had my body armour on at the time, and I ended up in a wheel sort of trapped with him on top of me, bashing my head in.
Was he armed?
No.
Was he Indigenous?
Yes.
And what about the woman who attempted to hang herself?
She was also Indigenous. It was outside one of the camps here in town.
Is that the only occasion that you've been the subject of a violent attack by a member of the community, apart from, of course, the incident you've already told us about after the committee?
No.
Thank you. Now I want to turn, if I can, to the issue of a lawyer, and in particular conversations that arose or text messages between you and Mr. Rolfe at a time when you said something to the effect of "don't talk, lawyer, lawyer, lawyer," or something to that effect.
Yep.
And I think you mentioned that the lawyer that you were referring to was a lawyer that you had engaged or that had at least provided some advice to you.
Not Rolf's lawyer.
No.
No.
Who was the lawyer that told you, for example, that you were to stay home?
So that happened after the arrest of Rolf.
Yes.
That was Ray Murphy. He was
Ray
representing
Murphy.
us.
And is that the same lawyer that at that time I think was engaged by Mr. Rolfe at the time of his arrest, for the purpose of bail at least?
I don't. Oh, for the purpose of bail, yes. I don't think that was the lawyer that he had engaged. I'm not.
Thank you. I want to turn now specifically to the events on the 9th of November 2019. Now, you've told us in different ways, I think, that you had no idea how the 5 a.m. plan morphed or changed or was abandoned. That's effectively the evidence that you give.
Correct.
You tried very hard to think back to that particular occasion and try and reconstruct, if I can put it that way, how there was a change.
Correct.
What I want to do is to take you through what you did know. You knew that the mission was to arrest Kumanjayi Walker,
Yes.
and you knew that in Alice Springs,
Yes.
before you came to Uwindamu.
Correct.
And you knew that from Sergeant McCormack,
Yes.
because that's specifically what he told you the mission was all about.
I believe so, yes.
It was at Alice Springs, I think, that you watched the video of what I'll call the axe incident, which occurred on the 6th of November, 3 days before.
Correct.
And in addition to that, you yourself accessed, was it promise or emails or things of that nature, to gather more intelligence about Kumanjayi Walker?
Yes, the promise system, check any updated alerts and obtain a picture of him. Pardon me.
When you say obtain a picture from him, you told us how you took a photograph.
Yes.
You took a photograph of a screen or a screen dump, I think it was.
Or a screenshot. One of the, I don't remember which one it was, but I wasn't sure that we'd have reception out at Uwindamu, enough for the promise system to work on the phone to get photos up.
Photograph in case you needed to identify him once you moved into the community.
Correct.
When you say you looked at promise, did you also look at his past criminal history?
I don't think so.
You had never dealt with Kumanjayi Walker before,
Not to my knowledge.
but you certainly read the alerts that related to him.
Yes.
And you knew also that there was a warrant out for his arrest,
Yes.
and you knew also that he was, when apprehended, to be charged in relation to the axe incident offending
Correct.
involving those two officers, Smith and Hand.
Correct.
And you knew all of that when you left the Alice Springs police station before you got to Uwindamu.
Yes.
You knew when you got to Uwindamu that Sergeant Frost was the officer in charge of that police station.
Yes.
So in effect, she was your superior
Correct.
and the superior of all other members of the IRT and also the dog handler, Mr. Donaldson.
Yes.
You've told us that she was with you at all times,
Yes.
although there was an occasion where you were not present because you left or moved somewhere.
If I went out to make a phone call to call Mr. Donaldson, I think I walked away from them at that stage. Also to let the other guy, pardon me, let the other guys into the station, Ebel and Hawkins when they arrived, and that, like I've walked away to do that.
Right. So there were two separate occasions where, for example, Zachary Rolfe was in the presence of Sergeant Frost and you'd moved away from those two.
At least that many, yes.
But apart from those two that you can remember, you were basically with her.
As far as I can remember, yes.
Now, you've told us that your best recollection is that at no time were you handed or was your attention directed to what I'll call the email arrest plan. You understand what I mean by that?
I do.
But you tell us that she did give you a document, and that document was a map of some sort.
Yes, I remember seeing a map and the other email.
Right, and the map, was that a map of Uwindamu?
Yes.
And did it show the location, for example, of house 577 or any other houses within that community?
It showed all the houses of the community.
Right. The next thing that you knew, and you knew and must have known from the conversation you had from Sergeant Frost, was that house 577 was where the axe incident had occurred.
Yes.
And so that was the last known place that Kumanjayi Walker had been sighted by police.
Yes.
And so it would follow, would it not, that that's the most obvious first point of inquiry.
Yes, I think that's why we went there.
Because what you can say, as I understand it, is that when you left, when you were deployed by Sergeant Frost and the other members of the IRT at about 7:05 on the 9th of November, you didn't know where Kumanjayi Walker was.
No.
And you certainly were not told that you weren't to be deployed into the community until 11 a.m. 11 p.m, I'm sorry.
No, we were not told that.
There was no conversation about 11 p.m.
No.
It was certainly anticipated and expected that you would leave at 7:05 when you did.
Yes.
And certainly Sergeant Frost knew that that's what you were doing, you and the other members of the IRT.
Yes.
There was another house that was identified or named or marked, which was 511.
Yep.
You mentioned, I think in passing, intelligence gathering.
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
Gathering any intelligence sort of defines itself by saying it backwards, I guess, a little. But any information I can find out about anything that I need that I don't already have, I'd consider to be intelligence.
Thank you. I'll come back to that specifically in the context of this case in a minute. But we know, as you've just told us, when you left at 7:05, you didn't know where Kumanjayi Walker was.
Correct.
And so plainly, when you left the police station, you could not have waited and arrested him at 5 a.m. because you had no idea where he was going to be at 5 a.m. the following morning.
Correct.
Because you didn't know, and because the mission was to arrest him, it was certainly your understanding, was it not, that when you left, you were to try and intelligence gather to identify where he might be.
Yes.
And I think it's common ground, even with Julie Frost, and it was put to you specifically by Council Assistant, that Julie Frost told you and the collective group, if you come across him, arrest him.
Correct.
So when you left, we know that you went to the last known place that he'd been seen, house 511, sorry.
577.
577, my apologies. And you knew that you'd been told that if you come across him, arrest him.
Yes.
Now, what you haven't been asked is this, and I want to ask you. When you got to 577, you drove there, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Zachary Rolfe was in your car.
Yes.
The others followed? Or were they in front?
Oh, I don't know.
As it happens, all 4 members of the IRT that had been deployed on this mission by Sergeant Frost, together with the dog handler, all moved initially to house 577,
Yes.
the last known place where Kumanjayi Walker had been seen.
Correct.
And then when you got there, inquiries were made, were they not?
Yes.
And you specifically spoke to somebody at that house, didn't you?
Yes, a young boy. I went to knock on the front door, and there was a little window to the left, and he poked his head out the window. He had a little superhero mask on, I think, from memory. And I asked him if he knew where Kumanjayi Walker was.
And what did he say?
I think he said no. And I asked if he stayed there. I don't know if that was then or if that was when I went inside, but I did ask him at some stage if he stopped there or stayed there, and he said yes.
Now, you went into the house, didn't you, with Zachary Rolfe?
I did, yes.
And you went into the house to make sure that Kumanjayi Walker was not there.
Correct.
When you left at that house, did somebody tell you about Kumanjayi Walker having been there only minutes before?
Yes.
Who was that?
I don't know the gentleman's name. He was out the side of the house,
Yes.
raking the dirt and rubbish and that, and tidying the place up. And I think he was hosing a garden as well. He provided that information for us.
When you say he provided that information, can you, as best you can, tell us to whom did he provide that information?
I think Rolfe and myself.
And how did that come about? Did you or Rolfe or both of you ask him if he knew where Kumanjayi Walker was?
I don't recall which one asked or who asked.
Certainly, the request was made of him in any event.
The request was made of him, yes.
One of them.
Yes.
And I assume you told him that you were looking for Kumanjayi Walker?
I think so.
And he told you, in effect, that you'd missed him only minutes before.
I think 3 minutes, he said.
Now, you knew, didn't you, because of the axe incident, that Kumanjayi Walker was likely to decamp if you knew police were present?
Yes.
And so once you're in the community, and you know this from your own police experience, I assume, once you and the other police officers are in the community and you've disclosed the fact that you're looking for Kumanjayi Walker, it's going to get around the traps fairly quickly, isn't it?
Yes.
So there was an element of urgency, wasn't there, in the circumstances that presented themselves to you on this occasion, because you'd identified the fact that you're police officers, you're looking for Kumanjayi Walker, and you've been told that he'd only left 3 minutes before.
With the information I had, yes.
Right. Did that person, that male that you spoke to, say anything about Rakisha, his girlfriend?
I don't recall.
In any event, he identified where he thought they were going to, or where they would be.
Yes.
Do you remember what he said?
I don't remember his exact words. He said that they'd gone to either, I don't know if he pointed to a map or if he told us the house numbers. It was possibly 511 or 518, I think is the other one.
And so armed with that intelligence or information that you had got, all of you then move to the vicinity of 511.
Correct.
And we know that ultimately Constable Burl and Rolf enter 511, which is where this tragic shooting event occurred,
Correct.
with you outside.
Yes.
And you were in a courting position consistent with your training.
Yeah, I stayed out. I think it was 5:18. I was out the side of that house near the car, checking on that entrance to the house. The dog handler was on what would have been my left, looking at it all, in between the houses and the bush.
Now, whilst, as it happens in this case, 4 of the 5 were members of the IRT, this was a general duties deployment, wasn't it?
Well, I thought we were deployed as the IRT to go and arrest Walker initially. Once we got to Yuendamu, it appeared that we were wanted to do general duties policing in the community as well.
All right. Let me ask you this. Leaving aside that potentially he was a high risk or a higher risk target because of the events which had happened on the 6th, was there anything unique about going into the community and trying to identify where a particular offender is and apprehending him?
I don't think there was, no.
In other words, there must have been other occasions where you identified somebody on the list that you look at before you start the shift, and then you decide you're going to go out, presumably sometimes with others, and you go about trying to find out where they are.
Yes.
And the most obvious way of doing that, Police 101, is you go to the house that you know is somehow connected to them.
Correct.
And you make inquiries.
Yes.
And I think you actually did exactly that in relation to the Walker camp on the 7th.
Yes.
But on that occasion, of course, it didn't arrive in you identifying where he was or anything of that nature.
No, I don't think there was anyone home.
All right. Now, you've been asked to reflect, and you've asked, how things could be different and how things might have been different. And you said, amongst other things, that better communication would be ideal.
Definitely.
You talked about a team leader being nominated because there was no team leader on this occasion, was there?
Nothing officially nominated.
No. There was no risk assessment done?
No.
Because all of these things are with the benefit of hindsight.
Yes.
At the time that you went about your business, together with the other members of the IRT, was there anything that you did which was not consistent with the way in which you would normally conduct your day-to-day policing when you're looking to identify an offender and apprehend them?
I don't think so. I don't feel that there was.
When you left the Yuendamu police station at 7:05 together with the other members, you had a clear understanding, as I understand your evidence, at the specific direction of Sergeant Frost, that if you were to come upon Kumanjayi Walker, you were to arrest him there and then and bring him back to the police station.
I take him to Alice Springs.
Alice Springs, I'm sorry. Regardless of the time or location.
Yes.
Nothing further, thank you.
Mr. Guinea?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
Yes.
Mr. Reid.
Sorry.
To the bar table.
We see from the video when you're at the station, you pick up a shotgun to walk out, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And I think you can also see Senior Constable Hawkins pick up his rifle, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. Sergeant Frost was still at the police station when you left?
Yes.
Was she in the area?
Yes.
Did she say anything to you, look guys, you're just meant to be going out to do intelligence, you're not going to need your long rifles?
No.
Did she say anything like, look, I just want you to start at 11 o'clock at night, there's no rush to get out there? Did she say anything like that?
No.
The dog handler, the dog itself is not used for gathering intelligence, is it?
No.
It's used for either tracking or helping to apprehend, is that right? Or searching?
Yes.
Yes. But a dog handler is also trained in general duties procedures and operations.
Correct.
Was anything said to Mr. Donaldson, you can leave your dog back at the police station because you're just going out to, find intelligence?
No, I don't think there was anything said. I don't know if they have dog facilities there.
Yes, okay. Would normally the dog handler keep his dog?
Normally he does, yes. Like even if they attend another job with us, the cars they've got are air conditioned inside
And
for
the
the
dog
dog.
stays there.
The dog stays there,
And the dog's perfectly happy.
and the GDs, sorry, the dog handler can come and help us.
Yes, but nothing was said to him. There's no need to deploy your dog until perhaps 5 o'clock.
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
I think it's your turn, Mr. Connect.
Thank you, Your Honour. I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Dr. Dwyer?
Nothing arising, thank you, Your Honour.
Officer Kirstenfeld, thank you for coming and giving your evidence. I know it's been longer than you expected, and I again apologise for the fact that it's gone overnight. But that completes your evidence and you're free to go. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Your Honour. Thank you, everyone.
Your Honour, the next witness is Adam Donaldson, Sergeant Adam Donaldson. I call Adam Donaldson. He's been brought in.
Thank you.
Your Honour, are you proposing to deal with the non-publication order issue at this stage?
I think I think there are going to be some further submissions, so I'm going to extend my the order that I've made at the moment until further order of the court, and we'll find another time to finalise the submissions.
Your Honour, if I could just address you on that. I intended to seek leave to be excused at the conclusion of my client's evidence. In line with that, pending any further submissions, perhaps if I seek leave of the court to appear remotely in regards to the non-publication application.
Yes. When do you propose to leave our jurisdiction?
My flight's not until 1 o'clock tomorrow.
All right. We'll stay in contact with counsel assisting, and we'll see if we can deal with it before then. The only reason I'm not dealing with it now is that we have quite a tight witness list, and it is very inconvenient for witnesses to anticipate being called and make travel arrangements and the like. And so I'll try and deal with it while you're here, but we'll just see how we go.
Your Honour, just I think to ease Mr. Connect's mind, I'm told that the estimate for a set of written submissions from those who will oppose the application is about 8 PM tonight. So we'll certainly have them by tomorrow. And then I'm not sure if it was proposed that it be dealt with on the papers or that there be brief submissions, but it certainly sounds like something we could deal with before Mr. Connect leaves the jurisdiction.
All right, well, hopefully we can. Yes. Officer, take a seat. Thank you for coming. Before you give any evidence, do you promise to tell the truth to the court?
I promise.
Thank you.
Sergeant, can I ask you to restate your full name for the record?
Yeah, Adam Donaldson.
And your current rank and station?
I'm a detective sergeant at the Alice Springs Police Station.
Now, you have either provided formal interviews or given evidence on a number of occasions, that's right?
Yes, I have.
All right, I'll just identify that for the record. You were interviewed at about 3 o'clock in the morning on the 10th of November 2019.
Yes, I was.
You're at 7-29 for the record. That was in fact at the Uindamu police station,
Was.
is that right? Your second recorded statement was on the 21st of November 2019.
Yes, it was.
That's 7-30, Your Honour. You gave evidence at the committal at Zachary Rolfe's trial.
Yes, I did.
In those criminal proceedings at 7-30 capital A, Your Honour. And you ultimately gave evidence at trial on the 15th of February 2022.
Yes, I did.
At 7-30 capital B. Suffice to say, Sergeant Donaldson, you have been through the events of the 9th of November time and time again.
Yes.
and I'd suggest to you that you've set out your recollection of those events clearly.
Yes.
In documents or in accounts that you gave as early as the 10th of November 2019.
Yes.
I don't intend to rehearse the entirety of your evidence, and so don't think that it's because the evidence that you have given isn't significant if there are parts of your evidence I overlook, okay?
Yes.
All right. I want to ask you some questions about the type of work you do. Can you tell, Your Honour, whether you have any specialist training?
Yes, so I was a dog handler for about 4 years, doing both drug detection and general purpose dog.
I won't ask you any questions about drug detection, but can you give Her Honour a sense of the types of police issues that you would deploy a general duties dog with?
Yeah, so the primary use of patrol dogs is searching, tracking people, searching areas, search and rescue. They're also used for building and area searches. They're used to locate hidden items and articles in areas. They're also used for apprehending offenders, and that's about it.
Can I ask you some questions specifically about apprehending offenders?
Yes.
Why does the Northern Territory Police Force use dogs in the apprehension of offenders?
So patrol dogs are another option for less than lethal force when trying to apprehend someone, in particular someone that may be violent or that may be armed. It reduces the risk to police and to the public.
Now, to some that might seem counterintuitive because these dogs are frightening, would you agree?
Yeah, they can look frightening, yes.
But in what ways do you say that the use of these dogs...
It was a German Shepherd, man.
In what ways do you say that the use of these dogs reduces the risk of harm?
A lot of the time, and over the time I was doing it, the mere presence of a dog often brings about peaceful solutions or peaceful resolutions to jobs or incidents in which other circumstances a higher level of force might need to be used. I found that merely sometimes me just being there resolved the situation without any need to use force whatsoever.
Was that a part of using presence as a tactical tool? Was that a part of your specialist training as a dog unit operator?
Yeah, and there's different forms of presence. I can just arrive somewhere, or I can have a dog just sitting next to me in a relaxed state, or I can have a dog bark, all of those things. But just merely the presence of the dog is definitely a tool that we use.
And when you say you can have the dog bark, you'd give a command and the dog would bark?
Yes, you can give a command to make the dog bark when you want the dog to bark.
I take it that you were a general duties police officer before you were a dog unit officer?
Quite a while ago I was a general duties police officer, and then I went as a detective, and then I went to dog squad after that.
Do they bark if you don't give a command?
They can, ma'am, but then we make them be quiet because it can be difficult to communicate with the dogs barking if you're trying to have a conversation.
Do you have a sense of how frequently, when you deploy with the dog, you simply use presence as a tactical tool, and how frequently you actually let the dog off the leash?
Yes, so over that time, I would say that I would take the dog out of the car. Over that time, hundreds of times the dog would have come out. Presence would be 90% of that, and half the time the dog doesn't even get out of the car. A lot of it is just me being there. Yeah.
But I take it that there are occasions where you do let the dog off?
Yes, if the circumstances require it, yes.
What is the dog trained to do in those circumstances?
In which particular circumstance?
Let's cut to the chase.
Yep.
You have an offender who is fleeing police on foot.
Yep.
And is faster than the police.
Mm.
What is the dog trained to do when you let the dog off the lead?
Okay, so if I'm justified in deploying the dog in the circumstances that's surrounding it, I can give that dog a command, and that dog will be sent to apprehend the person and hold them there until such times as I get there or another police officer gets there.
What physically does apprehension involve?
It involves using a bite to hold someone in position until I get there.
Do you give further commands once the dog reaches the person?
No, if I've already given the command, the dog is deployed. I've already given the dog that command. If that person then surrenders, I can call the dog back. The dogs are trained to come back mid-deployment if it's required. Otherwise, no, I've given that dog the command. He knows what he has to do from that point on.
And so the dog bites and latches on.
We usually bite a limb, yes, like an arm. 90% of the time it'll be an arm.
But I take it that unless you give the command, the dog is trained not to release.
The dogs will not bite unless we've told them to bite.
Assuming you've given the command to bite, unless you give the command to release, they'll stay on the limb. Is that what they're trained to do?
Yeah, and the dog will stay and it won't repeatedly bite. It's already bitten once. If a dog, we train them to stay on there. We don't want them to come off and make repeated bites. It just causes more injury. The dog will bite and hold until such point as we get there. And when it's safe for me to take the dog off, it's safe for the person, it's safe for me, and it's safe for everyone else around, I will take the dog off as soon as I can.
I want to ask you some questions about deploying with other police officers. I take it from time to time you might deploy as a dog unit officer by yourself.
Yep.
But from time to time you also deploy with other police officers?
Not in my car, but it's very rare that I do things by myself. I'm a support unit and normally attached to helping general duties carry out their sort of duties.
And in addition to general duties, from time to time you're deployed with other specialist teams like the IRT?
Yeah, rarely. I only deployed with the IRT one time previous to this. I didn't usually work with IRT, but I worked with specialist units such as crime and anyone who requires my assistance on a case-by-case basis.
May I ask you some questions about when you deploy with other teams of police?
Yes.
Now, I take it that when you deployed together, everyone brings their own different skill sets?
Yes.
In your case, the specialist skill set of a dog unit officer?
Yes, it was.
In the IRT's case, a set of specialist skills that they're trained in, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, while you all bring different skill sets to the table, if you have a common goal, you work together, correct?
Yes.
And it's essential in the pursuit of a common goal that you plan, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And in fact, a part of the Dog Operations Unit General Order teaches, paragraph 22, the deployment of general purpose dogs is a collaborative effort between the DOU and the attending members. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct, because I'm the expert in the deployment of the dog and I usually give guidance to whoever needs my help as to how that dog can best be deployed.
And some of that guidance involves safety guidance, is that
Absolutely,
correct?
yes.
For example, at paragraph 48 of the General Order, the General Order indicates that it's your responsibility to convey to the other members of the team, for example, that if they come in between you and the dog while it's deployed, they should stop still and not make loud noises and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and we don't give that brief every time. A lot of this time, these things are covered in recruit training when dealing with dogs, and we'll tell new constables how to act around the dogs when we deploy them.
I suppose what I'm coming at is that there needs to be a degree of conversation between the dog unit officer and the other members of the combined team who are deploying together. Would you agree?
Yes, I'd agree.
It makes absolutely no sense for one of you to have one plan and the other members to have a different plan, does it?
Yeah, no, not at all.
And that's particularly important, isn't it, given that the dog unit and the IRT, at least in 2019, didn't have any formal written MOU between the two units, did they?
No, we didn't.
So you really relied on ad hoc and oral planning, is that right?
Yeah, whatever we spoke about then, yeah.
All right. I want to come to the events of the 9th of November now. You received a telephone call from Senior Sergeant Sean Finnis, is that correct?
Yep.
It was around about 12:30 p.m.
Yes.
I think the first record you make of this is in a set of notes in a police notebook, is that correct?
Yes.
Can you just tell Your Honour when you made those notes?
It would have been when I arrived, when I started getting ready for work that day.
Okay. So you probably made those notes contemporaneously?
Yeah, my things were at home, so I could pretty much start straight away from my house.
All right. Now, I'm not going to show it to you, but if I put it to you that your notes say that you received a call from Sean Finnis and you were... received a call from Senior Sergeant Finis to attend Yuendamu, and then it reads, arrest target and U/E.
Unlawful entry, I've just abbreviated unlawful entry.
Okay. And what you're recording there is what you understood to be the purpose of your deployment to Yuendamu. Is
That's
that right?
correct, yes.
You also said something about this in your first, your second recorded statement at page 9. You were told, weren't you, that Superintendent Nobbs was getting a team together to go out to Yuendamu?
Yes.
So the planning, although it was being relayed to you through Senior Sergeant Finis, was coming from even higher, correct?
That's my belief, yes.
And you understood that Nobbs was involved actively in designing the plan, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And your evidence was then that the purpose was twofold. Because of nurses having left the community, nurses had left the community because there had been a lot of break-ins. You recall that?
Yes, that was one part.
Now, you say that property crime is a common reason that the dog unit was deployed, correct?
Yes.
And in part that's because the dog unit is a very effective deterrent.
More so that dogs, we use dogs to track offenders away from unlawful entries and locate them that way.
Were you told anything by Senior Sergeant Finis, as you were called, about doing some patrols in Yuendamu when you arrived with the dog?
I don't recall. So can you say this question again?
Were you told whether you would be doing patrols with the dog in Yuendamu?
Not in the conversation with Sean Furness, I don't believe.
That's something
that was later, yeah.
In any event, the second purpose for your deployment was the arrest of a violent offender, correct?
Correct.
And you now know him to be Kumanjayi Walker.
That's correct.
Were you given that name at that time?
No, I wasn't.
All right. I want to read to you some of Senior Sergeant Finis's evidence and ask you whether this was relayed to you. Senior Sergeant Finis says this of the briefing he received from Superintendent Nobbs. He's asked, now, did he tell you anything about the specific plan for the arrest of Kumanjayi? And Finis answered, it was proposed that early the next morning that they would go and arrest him, and that was the plan. And that was something that happened regularly based on my policing experience as well, where things are certainly a lot less frantic early in the morning than what they are generally during the evenings. People are generally asleep. Now, can I ask you two questions about that? The first is, was that relayed to you by Senior Sergeant Finis that the arrest was to occur early the next morning?
I don't believe on my phone call with Senior Sergeant Finis that was relayed to me, no.
All right. The second question I wanted to ask you about is this. What he says about arrest early in the morning being consistent with his policing experience, that people are sleepier and chances of use of force are lower. Is that consistent with your policing experience?
Yeah, at times. It's also early in the morning is also usually is where people are at their home. That's a major one. As the day goes on, people often aren't home. Very early in the morning, people often aren't.
I want to ask you something else about your conversations with Finis, and it's this. Finis says that he was told by Superintendent Nobbs that there was a funeral on that weekend in Yuendamu. I'm not sure whether he said when it was on, but he certainly was aware that it was on that weekend. Was that relayed to you at that time?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. What time did you arrive in Yuendamu?
I believe it was around 5 o'clock.
And shortly after 5 or around 5:30, you had a conversation with Julie Frost?
Yes, I did.
And where did you have the conversation?
Inside the Yuendamu police station.
All right. I just want to take you to some of your evidence. I am conscious of the time. I'm trying to do this quickly, and I am aware that I'm leading the witness, but I'm trying to do it quickly. Now, in your recorded statement on the 21st of November, you said this. When I got there, I spoke to Julie, Sergeant Frost. She just gave me a rundown on what had been happening out there. She asked me if I'd seen the footage of Kumanjayi Walker and what had happened previously. The interviewer says, yep.
And then you say, and she showed me, she printed off an email for me that I hadn't got because it had been sent while I'd started driving out. Yep. And you continue. It just had a basic plan around what they wanted out of us for the next couple of days for the IRT and the dog for the next couple of days. There are then some questions about the attempted arrest of Kumanjayi Walker on the 6th of November, and the interview continues. Thank you. So Sergeant Frost gave you a bit of a rundown about what had been happening in community. Yep. And you got to see, and the nurse, this is your answer, and what had happened, the nurses had left and that there had been lots of property crime. They were actually out at school, which had just been broken into, and she said the nurses had all left town because they felt unsafe. Question, okay, and so you got to watch the video and she gave you a copy of an email that she'd written a bit of a plan. Your answer, yes, I think it was the superintendent Nobbs. Question, yep, at that point on, what was your understanding of the plan around the arrest? Answer, my understanding was that they wanted to do it early the next morning. Yep. Does that accord with your memory today?
Yes, it does.
I want to ask you a couple of questions about that exchange. I might just ask that the witness be shown a copy of what was Annexure E to the first recorded statutory declaration of Superintendent Nobbs. This is the 449 arrest plan. Now, you were shown this document at committal, you were shown this document at trial, but for completeness, can I ask that you identify it?
Yes, this is the email that Sergeant Frost handed me when I arrived at the Unamu police station.
All right. And I won't take you to it, but again at trial, you recall you were showed some stills of some CCTV footage of you in the muster room?
Yes, I was.
And you were holding a document?
Yes, I was.
And you couldn't be sure, but you thought that was probably the document you now have in your hands?
Yes, that was what I thought.
All right. Now, I just want to ask you some specific questions about the document itself. All right. At committal, you explained that your understanding of that order was, well, I was to be assisting with the unlawful entries at the nurses' quarters to start with, and then the following day I would be looking for the arrest target. Do you agree?
Yes.
And that, in effect, is the plan that's set out at the bottom of the second page of the arrest order?
Yep.
And it reads that on Saturday the 9th of November at 11 p.m, the IRT had to commence duty and conduct high visibility patrols and respond to call-outs?
Yes.
Did you understand it to be your role to participate in those high visibility patrols?
No, I don't think it was.
What did you understand your role to be?
I was just to be prepared to go out overnight if needed, and then for the arrest the next morning.
But certainly you understood that you were to be involved with the IRT the next morning in the arrest?
Yes, I did.
All right. And indeed, you say at committal that there was a general understanding between you and the IRT members that you would operate as a team to effect the arrest at the appropriate time. Do you agree?
Yes.
All right. That's what you said?
Yes. And
that's what you recall?
Yes.
Okay. Can I ask you a question now about the first page of that document? In bold, there are 4 lines towards the top of the page. You agree?
Yes.
The second page says Authorisation Superintendent Nobbs.
Yes.
Now that is consistent with the evidence you've given earlier that you understood that this to be a plan that was designed in tandem by Sergeant Frost and Superintendent Nobbs.
Yes, that's right.
And that the ultimate authorisation or approval was given by Superintendent Nobbs.
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you know Julie Frost before you saw her on the 9th of November?
Yeah, we knew each other.
Right. Do you respect her?
Yeah.
Irrespective of any respect you had for her personally, as a more senior officer, she was due your respect as a more junior officer. Would you agree?
Yes, I would.
She gave you a document.
Yes, she did.
She obviously had a reason for giving you the document.
Yes.
And you ensured that you understood it.
Yes.
Because you understood that she wanted you to understand it.
Yes.
Okay. Now, it doesn't really matter whether you call that email a plan or an order or a direction or some of Sergeant Frost's ideas about what was to happen on the 9th. You knew that they were the ideas of the most senior member of the police force in Yuendamu.
At that time, yes.
And so it was important that you understand them.
Yes.
And that you comply with them.
Yes.
Okay. So it wouldn't, for example, be satisfactory for you, having been handed the document, to skim read it and not seek to understand it.
Yeah, no.
Okay. And that's not what you did.
No.
Okay. You weren't necessarily privy to all of the pros and cons that had gone into developing this plan, were you?
No.
What you did know was that there had been a number of different issues in the community.
Yes.
Including break-ins at the nurses' quarters.
Yes.
Had you come to understand by that point in time that there was also a funeral on?
Yes, I had.
And were you aware that sometimes funerals in remote communities can be associated with, overcrowding and disputes and things like that nature?
Yes.
And was that on your radar in terms of what might go on?
Yes, it was, because I knew there'd be more people in town than usual.
Okay. You also knew that Kumanjayi Walker was, at least loosely, had been identified as a high-risk target.
Yes.
Certainly a target that warranted the deployment of the IRT.
Yes.
And in your committal evidence, you gave evidence that the IRT you understood usually to be deployed for more significant or violent targets.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. You knew that senior officers had decided that the best way to proceed was at 5 a.m. in the morning.
Yes.
And that's, even if it isn't what you always do, it is a common police tactic, correct?
To
arrest in the morning?
Yes.
Okay. And you also knew that those more senior police officers saw there to be a role for Felix Alafeo in that plan. Would
That's
you agree?
what the plan says, yes.
Yeah. You left the station at around about 6:18 p.m. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And that was because you wanted to go see where the nurses' quarters were because you weren't familiar with where they were.
Yeah, that's correct.
In effect, you wanted to get a sense of the lay of the land.
Yes.
It was getting dark.
Yeah, I wanted to know where I needed to go at night if I had to go there.
But in effect, you were preparing for what you were going to be doing at 11 p.m.
Yeah, or overnight, yes.
Okay. Because that was primarily your area of interest through the night.
Well, yeah, through the night, yes.
Now, shortly before 7 p.m, you received a telephone call from Constable Kirstenfeld.
Yes.
Now, he said to come back to the Yuendamu police station.
Yes.
I think you've indicated that that was a short telephone call.
Yeah, it was just to come back.
Your first recorded statement was given on the 10th of November 2019.
Yes.
At 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yes.
When events were fresh in your memory.
Yes.
And you said, and I quote, that Kirstenfeld told you that they were going out and search for Walker.
Yes.
If that's what you said then, do you think that's likely what he said to you?
Likely, yes.
Okay. Your understanding at that point in time was that there must have been some change to the plan.
Yes.
Okay. Because you didn't understand the plan to be that you or any other member of the IRT would go out at 7 p.m. or thereabouts to search for Kumanjayi Walker.
Yeah, no, that was not the discussion I had that afternoon or what the email said.
All right. Did it occur to you to ask Kirstenfeld, have you had a look at this 5 a.m. plan?
No, I didn't.
Okay. In any event, you returned to the station at about 7 p.m.
Yep.
And when you return, everyone's in the muster room.
Yes.
Kirstenfeld.
Yep.
Ebel.
Yep.
Hawkins.
Yep.
Julie Frost.
Yep.
Felix Alafeo.
I believe he was.
You remember if Chris Hand was there?
He was there earlier in the night. I don't know if he was there then.
Okay. Where were they physically in the muster room?
It was the Yuendamu sort of open area in the middle. Everyone was just standing around a desk.
Okay. And I take it that the members of the IRT were gathered around the desk.
They were, yes.
Looking at the desk.
Yes.
Okay. And in your second recorded statement, you say Zach was giving a brief on where we were going to go.
Yes.
Okay. Now, was Julie Frost immediately around the table, or was she standing back?
I can't remember.
You can't remember where she was? No. You certainly can't remember her actively participating in this conversation?
No.
Okay. As far as you know, she didn't say a word while you were in there for the 5 or so minutes between 7 and 7:06?
Not that I remember.
Okay. Now, during the briefing that Zach Rolfe was now giving, he was telling you about where you were going to go?
Yes.
He was identifying houses?
Yes.
He told you were going to start at house 577?
Yes.
And he was referring to documents on the table?
Yes.
Can you recall what those documents were?
I believe it was a map of the Unamu community.
And can you recall what he said?
That just we were going to house 577 and just going to go have a look if Kumanjayi Walker was there.
Okay. You were searching for him?
Yes.
And again, that was a plan that was inconsistent with the plan you had at least read earlier that day?
Yes.
Okay. I want to ask you some questions about chain of command. The police force is a hierarchical organisation.
Yes.
In that sense, much like the military.
Yes.
But also like other professions. Doctors, lawyers are, in a sense, hierarchical.
Yes.
Basically, in a hierarchical organisation with a chain of command, orders are passed down the chain.
Yes.
The top of the chain, you have your more senior officers, superintendents, commanders and the like.
Correct.
And at the bottom of the chain, you have your junior officers, constables first class.
Yes.
All right. Now, a more senior officer can give a more junior officer a command.
Correct.
And provided it's lawful, they follow it.
Yes.
Now, a junior officer can raise with the senior officer a concern that they have about the order.
Yes.
So that's not prohibited.
No, of course not.
You're allowed to discuss if you have concerns.
Yes.
But unless circumstances are urgent, if a junior officer wants to depart from an order that they've been given by a senior officer, they would be expected to discuss that departure with the senior officer.
Possibly, unless circumstances had changed in which you needed to change your plan. Yes.
If circumstances have changed, but circumstances are not urgent, and a plan has been devised
yes.
by a senior officer, there would be an expectation that you seek an approval from the senior officer for the change of plans. Would you agree?
If it was serious enough, yes. If it was a minor change, then I would say no, you wouldn't need to.
Well, I mean, let's cut to the chase here. You were given a written a written arrest order.
Yes.
That took into account all of those considerations that we talked about.
Yes.
And took into account considerations that you may not have known about.
Yes.
So they were potentially balancing matters that were outside your knowledge. You agree?
Yes.
Now they asked you to do something quite particular, which was arrest Kumanjayi at 5 a.m. in the morning. Correct?
Yes.
To go and search for him at 7 p.m. was a very significant change. You'd agree?
Yes.
It was a change that would require approval up the chain of command, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you came back at 7 p.m, did you turn to Julie Frost and say, hang on a second, has there been some confusion here?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Do you think in hindsight it was important that you turned to the sergeant who was involved in devising the plan and say, look, are we all on the same page? Have we all received the same briefing?
Quite possibly, but Sergeant Frost was present at the time. I was not privy to all the conversations that had gone on before that. So as far as I was concerned, there'd been a change in the plan that had been discussed between Sergeant Frost and IRT. Just because I wasn't privy to that conversation, I still thought it must have happened and the plan had changed.
All right. Let's unpack that a little bit.
Yep.
You weren't privy to those conversations?
No.
So you were making an assumption?
Yes.
In hindsight, do you think that was a little bit dangerous?
Possibly.
I want you to cast your mind back to the evidence you gave about the importance of when you deployed as a group with another unit of working from the same plan.
Yep.
You'd agree that in order to ensure that you're working from the same plan, it's essential that you receive the same briefing, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Because you just can't say whether Sergeant Julie Frost thought that the plan had changed or had authorised a plan or was confused or had been overborne or ignored.
No, I can't say.
Okay. You've also given evidence that you understood that plan to have been approved by Superintendent Nobbs, correct?
Yes.
Superintendent Nobbs is above Sergeant Frost in the chain of command.
Yes, he is.
Did you check with Superintendent Nobbs whether he had approved the change in the plan?
It wasn't my place to check with Superintendent Nobbs. Sergeant Frost was in charge.
All right. Did you check with Sergeant Frost?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So is your evidence that in the face of a potential deviation from a very senior police officer's plan, a police officer in your circumstance would do nothing?
In this circumstance, I believe that it changed.
Okay. Even though you didn't know whether Superintendent Nobbs had been consulted at all?
No, I didn't know. I know his intent was for us to arrest the next day. Circumstances in the way that intent is carried out can change. Our intent for that period was to make the arrest. I believe the plan had been buried to that evening, even though it was the next night. Sorry.
The extent that it had been buried, it could only have been buried by Sergeant Julie Frost.
Yes, I guess.
Okay.
Well, not really, because specialist units often, when they come on the ground, will give. So I'll use myself for example, and I'm not going to give evidence on IRT. I'm not specialist trained with the IRT, but I might arrive somewhere where a plan's been made, and if my specialist experience or my expertise in the deployment of the dog changes that plan, then I can give guidance to the local commanders on how the deployment of that dog will take place or how we can amend that plan from there.
I want to ask you a question about a word you just used, guidance.
Yeah.
You can't give them an order, can you?
Of course not.
Because you fall under them in the chain of command.
No, but they often will listen to the person who's the expertise in that field.
I know. But as far as you knew, the IRT, who had ostensibly some specialist skills here, had no conversations with Superintendent Nobbs.
No.
So they couldn't have given him any guidance.
Not that I know of.
And although that they have some specialist skills, they fall within the ordinary Northern Territory Police Force chain of command structure.
Yes.
Okay. Your Honour, those are my questions.
Thank you.
Just before we commence, might I just tender some documents which I have been meaning to do, and they may come up again in this witness as they just did. When the last witness, Constable Kirstenfeld, was being examined, I referred a number of documents to him. 2 stills from Yunnamoo Police Station CCTV, front counter CCTV and corridor. Might I propose that they be Exhibit 10?
Yes.
Video compilation Exhibit 11.
Yes.
The email from Acting Sergeant Shane McCormack to Sergeant Julie Frost, the 9th of November 2019 at 16:24, Exhibit 12. It's currently Annexure C to Superintendent Nobbs, but it may come up again and again,
Yes.
as it has done. So Exhibit 12. And the email from Sergeant Frost to Superintendent Nobbs, 9th of November 16:49, Exhibit 13. And the email from Sergeant Julie Frost to the IRT Watch Commanders, Alice Springs Supervisors, dated 16:59, Exhibit 14. Thank you, Your Honour.
Thank you. Yes, Miss O'Neill.
Thank you, Your Honour. Senior Constable, my name is O'Neill. I represent the Walker, Lane and Robertson families. I want to ask you some questions about body-worn video, if I may. You've been a police officer since 2007 with the Northern Territory Police Force, is that correct?
Correct.
So, as at the 9th of November 2019, you've been there for over 12 years, is that correct?
Yes.
Body-worn video was first trialled in the Northern Territory Police in about 2014. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And came in more permanently in late 2016, is that correct?
That's correct. I think, I can't be certain of the dates, but that sounds accurate.
And so by November 2019, you yourself had been using body-worn video for about 3 years. Do you agree with that?
Yes. I wouldn't have been, no. Not everyone, body-worn cameras weren't rolled out to everyone immediately. I didn't get my body-worn camera until perhaps the end of 2018, I think.
So about a year by the time...
That would be more accurate, yes.
And is there a general order in the Northern Territory Police Force regarding body-worn video?
Yes, there is.
There is?
Yeah.
And is there an instruction under that general order?
I believe so, yes.
Now, body-worn video, in your view, is that a benefit to your policing?
Yes.
It allows for a more accurate recording of incidents, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
It increases accountability for both police and those people you interact with, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
It reduces sustained complaints against police,
Yes.
correct? And it increases successful prosecutions where it's relied on to record certain actions and admissions. You agree with that?
Yes, I agree.
It also improves the behaviour of the people police interact with from time to time. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
On the 9th of November, you were wearing your body-worn video camera, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
And we have in the brief of evidence 5 recordings that you make at various points, correct?
I assume so, yes, I don't know.
What makes you decide to turn on your video?
When I'm going to execute a police power is the way in which it's written, but yeah.
And what makes you turn it off?
When I'm no longer executing a police power, or I'm no longer required to have it on.
Now, what occurred on the 9th of November, you'd agree, was a critical incident.
Yes, I would.
And as part of that, you were keen to ensure that what happened, that as much of what happened was captured on your body-worn video. Do you agree?
Yes.
It's not common for police to make recordings on their body-worn video when they're inside the police station, correct?
Yeah, no, not regular. No, that's not a thing that normally happens at all.
But this was not a usual incident.
No,
do you
of course
agree?
not. Yeah, of course not.
And so as a result, from time to time, you did make recordings of what occurred in the police station, correct?
Yes, correct.
And you did it because you recognised the importance of preserving evidence of police actions, correct?
Correct.
By about 11 p.m. on the night of the 9th of November, you were aware that Constable Rolfe had shot Kumanjayi Walker,
Yes, I was.
and you were aware that he had passed away.
I believe so. I can't recall the time.
Would you accept from me that he passed away at about 8:36 p.m?
Yes, I accept that.
Now, on the 12th of November, Constable Rolfe was charged with murder. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
You've been in the police force since 2007. You must have considered on the night of the 9th of November that it was a possibility that Constable Rolfe would be charged in relation to this incident. Do you agree?
I did not.
You did not consider that it was possible that he would be a suspect in relation to the death?
No, I didn't.
I want to play you some... Were you aware that his gun was removed by Senior Constable Hawkins?
I remember that his firearm was taken away, and that's just often something that will happen if a firearm's been discharged during a job or an accident.
Were you aware that photographs had been taken of his injury?
I wasn't.
Were you aware that his shirt had been seized?
When was that, sorry?
At the police station that night?
No, I wasn't.
Now, body-worn video is another important tool in preserving evidence in addition to seizing items. You agree with that?
Absolutely, yes.
And that's because of the accuracy that comes with body-worn video.
Yes.
It also provides police with protection from allegations of a cover-up. Do you agree with that?
I agree.
I just want to play you some video, if I may. It's from 4.1 of Your Honour's brief, video 4 of 5, and I'm asking that it be played from the 2-minute mark. This is your body-worn video. Senior Constable, did you hear what was said at the end of that excerpt?
I believe I said I'm turning mine off.
And did you hear what that was said in response to?
Can you turn yours off? Or is your camera off? I'm not sure.
Can I suggest to you Constable Rolfe said, is anyone on?
Quite possibly. I didn't hear what it said, but yes, that sounds accurate.
And you understood at the time that he was asking if anyone's body-worn video was recording, correct?
Correct.
And you responded to that question, didn't you?
I did, yes.
And you said, nah, I'm about to turn mine off, correct?
Correct.
And you did turn it off, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Now, would you agree that it appeared that Constable Rolfe was checking to see what he was about to say or do was going to be recorded?
I believe so, yes.
And in response to that inquiry, you turned off your body-worn video. Do you agree with that?
Yes, that's correct.
Wouldn't the fact that he asked you to turn it off make it more important to leave it on?
At that stage, and I'm not sure what stage of the night that was, I couldn't tell, but that looked like we were no longer doing anything and we were just standing, we were together in the main room.
But you didn't need him to ask you, is anyone on, in order for you to come to the conclusion that you needed to turn your body-worn video off.
Can you say that again, sorry?
I'm suggesting to you that you did not turn your video off because nothing was happening. You turned your video off because he asked, is anyone on? Do you agree?
I believe so, yes.
And so, in a critical incident like that, where Constable Rolfe shot the man who had just passed away, wouldn't the fact that he asked you to turn it off make it more important to leave it on?
I believe at the time, as I remember, from what I remember, is we were coming together in the middle, and I think the whole point of that was to see if everyone was okay. And I probably can see that that would not look what it looks like, but for me, a lot of things had just happened. I think that was the first, and I'll call it lull, in what had happened all that night, where we could just take a breath, and that's what I remember happening.
The next time you turn your body-worn video on, and I accept the recordings on the videos are not completely accurate, is about 11:28 p.m. when you're in the vehicles outside. Do you agree with that?
I don't know.
Does that sound about right?
Probably.
And so there's this gap of about 14 minutes
Yep.
where your body-worn video is not on. Do you agree with that?
I agree, yes.
And so there is no record, as far as you know, of what was said. Do you agree with that?
I agree, yes.
Those are my questions.
Mr. Mullins.
Thank you, Your Honour. I'm going to refer to document 7030 in a few moments. Sergeant Donaldson, my name is Mullins. I appear on behalf of the Brown family. I've just got some questions for you. Firstly, just in respect of how you discovered that shots had been fired. It's the case, isn't it, that you heard a call over the radio that shots had been fired?
No, I heard the shots. I was outside.
Well, do I understand it that your vehicle was across the road from the vehicle, or at least one of the vehicles, that was adjacent to the house?
My vehicle was out the front, just next to the road, yes.
And how far were you from the vehicle to which Kumanjayi Walker's body was ultimately dragged to?
His body was, the other vehicle, I believe, was probably about 10, 15 metres away.
And were you standing by your vehicle when... No.
Sorry. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go.
That's right. Were you standing by your vehicle when the officers went into the house?
Yes, I was.
And did you observe them going into the house?
Yes, I did.
And did you observe that there were several people in the vicinity?
Yes, I did.
And I think in your statement, which we'll go to in a few moments, you estimate about 10 to 15 people.
From what I remember, yes.
And they were in various positions around the properties? They weren't all together?
It just wasn't in that property. There were people also outside around the streets as well.
And you noticed mainly women?
I don't remember.
Children?
I don't recall.
Well, do you have any recollection of there being children in the area?
I don't remember anyone. I just remember there were people around. I don't remember who they were.
Well, do you recollect there being children in the yard of the house, either the house 511 or the house next door?
I don't remember.
All right. Now, do you need to stay with your dog?
I know I don't need to.
So the dog can stay in the back of the vehicle and you can go away and leave it for a period of time?
Yes, that's correct.
And how long can you leave the dog for?
As long as needed, until he needs to get out and go to the toilet, until my car runs out of petrol.
All right. Now, when you heard the shots, what did you think?
Well, I immediately knew what had happened because shots had been fired, and I wasn't quite sure where to go from there, and I was waiting to get some guidance. I was initially going to go into the house, but I didn't go into the house. I waited with my vehicle to try and see whether or not or what response I would make to what's happened, whether I took my dog out of the car, whether I waited out the front, whether I went inside. I wasn't sure at the time.
Well, one witness told the court, who was present at the time, that when he heard the shots and realised that there had been a police shooting, he felt it was very shocking. Had you had this experience before?
Yes, I had.
You've been present at a police shooting before?
I have once before, yes.
And did you have the same reaction?
Yes, of course I did.
And is it the case that you felt your own adrenaline start to rise?
Of course, yes.
Now, as I understand it, that you took out a large party pack.
Yes, it's a pepper spray, yes.
So it's pepper spray, is it?
Yeah, or party pack is what it is, yes.
Well, can you just describe what you use it for?
It's usually used for, it's a long range, normally police carry small pepper sprays on their belt. This is a larger one. It disperses a larger amount of OC spray, and it's primarily used for large crowds.
Did you have a Glock on your hip?
I did, yes.
And so were you expecting there to be a large crowd that you needed to disperse?
I thought there was a potential that, yes, I might need to disperse a large crowd.
And is a large crowd 10 to 15 people?
It was initially. After the shots were fired, there was a lot of yelling and a lot more people started walking to where we were.
So that was more a definitional question. Is 10 or 15 people a large crowd?
No.
No.
Yes, I would think it is. If it's just me by myself, 10 to 15 people is a large crowd for me to deal with by myself.
So when you took your pepper spray out,
yes,
for the purposes of potentially using it, the 10 to 15 people that were already there, if you had to disperse them, you would have used it on them.
It wasn't necessarily about them. It was about what could have happened, and I needed to get it out of my car before I went inside if I chose to go inside.
And so what was going through your head about what could happen?
I felt that perhaps we were going to be attacked after that had happened. So I was concerned for myself and I was concerned for the other police officers in the house as well.
And who did you think you were going to be attacked by?
The community that was around us.
So the community that were there at the current time?
There were a lot of people there. So other than the 10 to 15 people at the house, there was also another house across the road, and as soon as it happened, a large amount of yelling came from that house and people started to walk out.
And how many people started to walk out from there?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Can we have document 7030 at page 14, please? So this is some questions that you were asked on 21, thank you, I should say. This is some questions that you were asked on 21 November 2019. Yeah. And I'm not sure who Hen is. Do you know who Hen is?
Yeah, that's Sergeant Cara Hen. She interviewed me on, I think it was 21st of November.
And you were asked, initially when you pulled up, there were probably 10 to 15 people sitting down. So when you say sitting down, were they sitting down at the house or they were the ones that were spread around in various places?
I no longer remember. I can't remember anymore.
And then so, yep, and initially it was quite calm. The guys went in and we were talking to people. There are a number of houses together. Yep, and then if we scroll down, please. There wasn't all that many people around at the start, and I could see that I didn't actually activate looks like I didn't activate my body worn until the shots had actually been fired. I was in the car because we weren't sure which way he was going to run from, because I could drive really quickly to get to where I needed to go. Can you just explain that? Were you actually with your car so that you could drive if you needed to release your dog?
Yes, so initially when we'd gone to house 577 and I was outside, I'd taken the dog out. We were attacked by a large amount of community dogs, so I had to put that dog away. So on deploying to the next house, I knew I wasn't going to take my dog out at that house because I thought we would be attacked from dogs again. The loose plan at that stage was for me to remain with my car. I know that on the previous occasion, when he ran from police, he ran to the bushland. So my plan was to stay with my car, and if Kumanjayi Walker ran from the house into the bushland, I would follow in my vehicle out of the community, and once we got to the edge of the community, I could deploy my dog from there.
Now, you've described quite a comprehensive plan about what was going to happen with your dog. That's right?
It's not very comprehensive.
Well, who did you discuss the plan with?
I think when we were at 577, I said I'll stay in the car, so if he runs to the bush, I can follow him to the edge of the bushland and go from there. And
was that a discussion between the five of you?
No, I would have been with, I think Zach came and told me after they'd spoken to people in 577. And I can't remember if there was another person with me out the back there, but that's when I said I would do that.
And was it the case that Zach was acting as sort of a de facto person in command of what was happening?
Yes, that's true.
All right. Was that always the case during the course of the exercise that you were undertaking after you left the police station soon after 7?
Yes.
Now, if we can scroll down a little further, please. And then as soon as the IR team moved into that house, which is 511, I think about 5 to 10 people started sort of becoming loud and walking down a side fence, yep?
Yes.
To go in, and that's when I got out of the car, which was the initial question. I'm sorry, I forgot. Move down a little further, please. Onto the next page. As soon as the shots were fired, it seems like the numbers double or triple. There could have been 50 to 60 people all of a sudden coming, and I could also see a bus coming.
Yes.
Now, two things. Firstly, when you say that the numbers doubled or tripled and up to 50 to 60 people, that must have taken a few minutes.
I don't know if that's the case, mainly because, as I said, and I said in the statement, it was quite quiet when we first went there. So I don't think I had a full appreciation of perhaps how many people were in the near vicinity. I remember there was only a few people at the house, but after the shots had sounded, a lot of noise started happening. A lot of people started coming out of other houses. So given the close proximity of that house in the middle of town, it wouldn't take long at all for people to start coming outside.
And is it the case that the shots rang out across the community?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So they would have been clearly audible?
Yes, easily audible.
But do you accept for the second proposition that you could also see a bus coming? It's unlikely that people would have been able to organise a bus, hop on the bus and travel within a couple of minutes of the shooting.
I think you've misinterpreted what I'm saying there, if I can clarify. After it had happened and I was outside, I could actually see vehicles already coming back into town. It wasn't related to the shots that had happened.
Right. I mean, the reality is that it may well have been... I mean, you thought the bus coming was from the funeral.
Yeah, I did think it was actually, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was related to the shots in any way whatsoever, but there were more people coming there.
Exactly. So the reality was from you that there may well have been people coming back from the community in cars.
Yes.
That were completely unrelated to the shooting.
Yeah, that's the cars, not the 50 or 60 people that I said
Right.
triple or doubled.
Okay. Now, I'm not going to play your body-worn video of you after you return to your vehicle, but just help me with this. Is your vehicle blue?
Yes.
So the body-worn footage of yours with you standing at or sitting in the driver's seat for a minute or two is you?
Yes.
And if we look around to what's depicted in the body-worn video, does that help us with get some sort of indication of all the people that were streaming in?
Quite possibly. I've only ever briefly seen this body-worn video once.
The front door of the vehicle stays open for quite a few seconds, if not a minute or so.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, I'm sorry.
Did you feel there was any urgency for you to leave?
At which point are we talking about here?
This is before you returned back to the police
shot?
station, after the shooting?
After the shooting, my door stayed open.
Yes.
Yes, I did think there was a hurry to leave.
All right. Did any person ever touch you or assault you?
No.
Did any person ever threaten you?
No.
How close did a person get to you?
I don't recall.
Well, did any person get within a metre?
No.
Any person get within 5 metres?
No.
Any person carry a weapon that you saw?
I couldn't see. I didn't see any.
There was a lot of screaming.
There was, yes.
And there was like a wailing.
Yes.
But beyond that, no person was threatening you at all.
Not at that stage. That's why we left quickly.
Right. Now, back at the station, You assisted with the CPR of Kumanjayi Walker.
I didn't do CPR. I provided assistance to him, initial first aid to him.
Do you recollect that shortly after you came back, that two gentlemen, Derek Williams and Warren Williams, came into the station?
I didn't see them until later, but I was aware they were at the station later, yes.
So you saw them later, though?
Much later, I found out Derek was outside, but I hadn't gone out the front for some time.
But did you ever see them inside the station?
No.
You've expressed in your statement some concerns about what was going on outside the station.
Yes.
Did you ever go outside?
Only briefly to speak with Derek and tell him if he saw when the Uluru nurses got there to let us know.
When you did that, was it calm outside?
It was fairly calm outside, yes.
So on the one occasion that you went outside to look how things were going on outside the station, it was calm?
Yes.
And did you feel threatened when you gave that information to Derek?
Not at that stage.
So that was just before the nurses arrived, is that right?
It would have had to be before the nurses arrived because I asked him to tell us when they got there.
Right. When you were having that discussion with Derek, did he ask you for information?
I can't recall. Quite possibly, yes.
Yeah. Is it the case that he may have asked you just to know what the current status of Kumanjayi's situation was?
He probably did, yes.
And did you know whether he was alive or dead?
I can't remember at that stage whether he was.
Now, sometime later, there was. I withdraw that. Can I just ask you a couple of questions then about the station itself?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the Unimu station?
Yes, I am.
You're familiar with the rear compound?
I am now. I wasn't at the time.
You know it can be easily breached by a person if they chose to.
Yes.
You know the station's got front glass windows.
I do know that. Yes.
None of them were smashed, were they?
No.
The rear of the compound was never breached.
No.
No person ever, to your knowledge, even tried to breach it.
Not that I know of. No.
Other than the rocks on the roof and the yelling outside, that was the only evidence of volatility that you're aware of?
Yes.
And why were you frightened?
Because at any time that can turn. All it takes is one person to agitate a crowd, and all of a sudden we're in a precarious position that's extremely dangerous. Yes, it wasn't, and I'm glad to this day that it wasn't. And I thank Derek and the people outside for keeping things calm. But in the back of my mind, I always thought at the moment, at the drop of a hat, that could turn and things could get really violent and ugly.
And where does your experience about one person winding up the crowd so that they can turn come from?
I've been a police officer in Central Australia the majority of my career. I've seen one angry person turn a whole camp against me and one other, or just myself. So that's where my experience comes from. It's happened before.
Where was that and when?
The exact time and date, I can't tell you the exact time and date. I can tell you that it's happened quite a few times. I've policed in Alice Springs a lot, and things can turn violent very quickly. And all it takes is one person to be really angry, and a large crowd can gather really quickly.
And was that in Alice Springs or a community?
Alice Springs.
In Alice Springs?
Yes, Alice Springs.
Has it ever happened to you in a community?
No, it hasn't.
Have you've gone to communities more than 100 times?
Yeah, I'd say so.
It's never happened to you in a community?
No, but I'd never been in that situation before. That was totally unprecedented for me.
But you said you've been in a police shooting before?
Yeah, as at a residential property in Alice Springs, not in a community 300 kilometres away from Alice Springs.
Interesting. Do you have a good recollection of that other police shooting?
It was so many years ago, so not really. My involvement with that was very limited. I was just standing at the front.
But do you remember whether the area was secured by police?
Yes, and there were a lot of police there.
So a lot of police arrived, the area was secured, and did the person pass away?
No.
So the person was transported to hospital or something?
Yes.
By ambulance? All right. But ambulance was called?
Yes.
Now, just finally, the drive out to the airport to collect other staff, do you recollect that?
Yes, I wasn't a part of that. I stayed at the station.
Well, did you hear? Did you hear? Was there any briefing in respect of that?
I wasn't privy to that briefing.
No problem. Thank you, Honour.
I know the time. We might just take